sides, take go, and pull a mast like that, so it's a little bit smoother getting in the boat. And then it's important to sheet the right amount of main sheet in, and to hike out the back pretty hard so that you're using your weight to keep the boat from tipping at first, and not sheet too hard. Leave it out a little bit so that you can accelerate, you know, and try to sail away on a small controlled hike, you know. It goes up, you ease, when it comes down you sheet in a little, and it's not, it's, you know, squeezing, you know, just the right amount to make it just hold just a slight hike on the weight, and then sail as low as you can to gain speed, and then once you're up to speed, then start to point. And the only trouble is usually that I don't have too much trouble in the U.S., but the Europeans run very high off the starts, and it makes it really tough to get a good start. Everybody seems to be pinching, and going slow, and if I can get across them, I'm gone by a long ways because I'm already going so much faster. And once you're going fast, then you sheet in the rest of the way, climb all the way forward, sheet in harder, get all the way in, and feet all the way forward, get fared in, and then you can start to point very high.
Okay, gentlemen, you've heard this, okay? In A fleet, don't point. What kind of plank do you use at the moment? What is the deflection of your plank?
The plank is made of ash on the top and spruce in the middle and ash on the bottom, 5/16 skins. It's a little bit more than minimum thickness, and it is the same thickness all the way side to side. It's not, you know, tapered side to side. It has a slight amount of gull wing to it, only a little bit, and it's the right amount of gull wing because when you have the skipper's weight plus 50 pounds, the skates are straight up and down. If you have too much gull wing, then the skates are angled in, and you must put glue pads underneath the chocks to make them the right angle. The jig that I have works really well for making just a slight amount of gull wing, and it works really good. And what we came up with, I have 2 1/4 inches of crown, so that's like 6 centimeters.
Can you maybe just point out what you mean with 2 1/4 inches of crown and things like that, because people might not understand the English.
Okay. A long time ago, Endel Vorma told me when I make the runner planks that you must make them like a tree. So if you look at the end of the plank, the grain is all going like this, you know, and on the bottom it's the opposite. To put the tree back together, Endel told me, Ron, you must make it like a tree. So that's the way I make them, and then they start out square, and then I just take a router to them, and then I use a power planer to try to make them the same. I leave them pretty flat on the bottom, and they end up with more shape on the top. I think it's good to have a flatter bottom. And then in the end, you know, and I check the deflection before I put the glass on. I know that the glass adds 25 to 30 pounds of stiffness to the plank. So if when someone calls me up and orders a plank, they tell me their weight, and I make the plank specifically for the skipper's weight with no clothes on, just normal in the gym when you weigh yourself.
So what is your weight and what is your deflection of your plank?
The plank is about 2 1/4 inches of crown. You know, straight line. So, and it goes down to 1 3/4 inches with my weight. 1 3/4 inches it goes down. So that's about 80% of the crown. It goes down with my weight on it, and that makes my mast work really good. So some people, if they have one of my masts, they're saying, "Oh, my mast is too stiff." Well, have you measured your plank? What's that got to do with it? Well, if the plank is very stiff and it stays up there, the rig stays tight and the mast doesn't go sideways. If the mast is very soft, the more it goes down, the rig gets looser, the mast goes more sideways, and the more the mast bends. So having the plank work with the mast, I think, is very important. So that's what I do with all the hulls and planks and masts that I sell. I make them specific for the skipper's weight.
What kind of mast do you use at the moment?
What else did I want to say about the plank? I guess it was just, the one thing was big, the 80%. And the mast I'm using is a rocket mast. I developed it a few years ago. It has some more unidirectional run all the way to the top, so it's a little stiffer up top, similar to the stiff tip. And then in the areas where the mast bends the most, I put some hoop carbon to try to help have a little more strength for keeping the walls from collapsing where the mast bend the most. And I don't know what to tell you about the deflection. I can sail with the stiffer mast than some other people. I can make a stiffer mast work because I have a feel for how much sheet tension to give it. Because if you just go in too hard right away with a stiff mast, it just things turn inside out and don't work right. You have to feel the boat with the main sheet, you know. And if it's very light air, what I like to do is just actually sheet the sail in till the sail has the shape that I like, and then steer on the telltales when it's light wind and you cannot hike, you know. And a lot of people just think they're going to go faster if they pulled in harder. Well, sometimes it's better to leave it out.
Do you still develop anything new in your masts, or is it just you think this is what it is, or you still trying new things, and what are you heading for?
I haven't tried much new in the last 2 years, I'd say. The rocket, I think, is about 3 years old, and every year that I'm making masts, I've now made 500 masts, easy. Every time I make a mast, I might learn something a little bit new about the technique of putting it in the mold, and so overall these years I've gotten better at this, and I could probably use to make some new molds and maybe come up with something new. I would sell more if I did it, but it's working so well that I'm kind of the opinion that if it's not broken, don't try to fix it.
So it's not that you say, actually I'm going to sail more and more with a softer spar, or do you say, actually I'm using a stiffer spar?
They're all pretty much the same. I mean, Struble, Harper, John Dennis, myself, Mark Christensen, Rob Evans, everyone is using the same rocket mast, and they work for a pretty good range of skipper's weights, you know, from 160 pounds to 200 pounds. They're still working really good. And the key is to have the runner plank have the right amount of deflection, and that really helps to keep making the mast work, I think. Then the only development that, you know, that I've had lately is just I've worked harder on my runners than ever. You know, and that's where I spend most of the time. Oh, I hate working on runners. It really pisses me off if I'm going somewhere and something gets piled on the runners and then there's nicks in them and I have to go and work on runners. Oh, it makes me crazy. But this year we also came up with a little Black & Decker laser light that it actually puts a line of a light now, not just a dot. So you can put this on the runner and run it and look at the end of the wall, and you know, I draw some lines with level on the end of the wall so you can make sure your edge is straight the whole way. My edges were all pretty good. I just seemed to wander a little bit in the very front and back, which is dull on my runners anyway. But so this year, 15 sets of runners before I went to the Worlds. I went through 15 sets, and first I line them all up on the table, all the runners lined up on the table, and I put stick tape to the table the whole way, and then I take the first one, I put it on the straight edge, I look, you know, I know which type of crown I want for a different type of runner, I check it, I put it there, I write a note next to this runner on the tape and go through all the runners and make a note on each one where they have to do it. Why this is good is because then you can go back through and you can put each one on the machine to change the shape the way you want it, and put it back and keep going through, and by the time you get back to that runner, it's already cooled. So many people make the mistake of working on a runner and then putting it on the straight edge, and oh man, it's got more crown, and they start working the middle some more, and they're looking, and there's more crown because it warms up and it grows. And then when it finally cools, you put it on there and you've got a big hollow, and that's a lot of work to fix. So I just line them all up at once and keep going through, and then the ones that are correct, I turn them backwards and put an OK by the tape and just keep going through, keep going through, keep going through, and for days until I get them exactly the way I want them. And then I will round the front and backs and stone them, and I double checked with the laser light to make sure they were all good. And then after all that is done, then I take them all downtown to Leon's shop where I have the oven and everything for making the masts. And what I did is, you guys all have seen the string gauge that I use for checking the parallelness, and what that does is it not only make sure that the runners are parallel to each other,